I want you to picture this. It's the perfect scenario, really. It's the story that everyone who's into financial independence, FIRE, dreams about.
Right, the finish line.
Exactly. So our hero, let's call her Alex. She finally hits her number. The spreadsheet gives the green light. She sends that resignation email. And for the first time in, 15 years, she feels this just monumental wave of pure euphoria.
I can imagine that feeling. It's the payoff for all the
It
sacrifice.
is. She sleeps late, books that bucket list trip to Patagonia, celebrates the absolute end of that soul-crushing commute. And, for that first glorious month, she feels completely invincible.
That's the honeymoon phase. It validates everything, all those years of saving, optimizing, minimizing. It proves the math actually works.
It does, but here's the twist. 4 months later, Alex is back home. The tan from Patagonia has faded. The euphoria is gone. And one Tuesday morning, the alarm doesn't go off. She realizes she has nowhere to go, no reports to file, no meetings to attend. She's financially free. The money is absolutely there, but suddenly she feels completely lost, adrift, and honestly, profoundly unsatisfied. The bliss just didn't stick.
And that silence.
Yeah.
It's often the hardest part of the whole equation. It's that moment the external scaffolding just falls away and you see if you've built any kind of internal structure underneath.
So that brings us to our first big question. Why does having 40, 50, or even 60 extra hours a week often lead to anxiety and boredom instead of, infinite bliss?
It sounds like a problem of immense privilege, I know.
Yeah.
But it's a genuine psychological reality. It hits almost every high achiever who quits cold turkey.
The truth is, the greatest challenge in the FIRE movement isn't reaching financial independence. It's mastering the life that comes after it. We're calling this the time-rich paradox.
I like that.
We spend decades training ourselves in this mindset of extreme scarcity, right? Save, optimize every dollar, minimize spending, hustle relentlessly.
And that scarcity mindset is brilliant for accumulation. Absolutely brilliant.
But it's fundamentally useless for maximizing your well-being, your happiness, once you have all this time.
It's a total behavioral clash. You spend 20 years optimizing for return on investment, ROI, focusing on dollars. The moment you quit, you suddenly need to optimize for, return on experience maybe, or return on fulfillment.
ROF, I like that.
Yeah, and you're focusing on time, but you're trying to use the old tools, the hustle, the spreadsheet rigor to manage this boundless new resource, and it causes stress because those tools were built for scarcity and control, not freedom.
So if your whole professional life gave you routine, status, deadlines, and a really deep-seated identity, how do you replace those foundational pillars when that external structure just dissolves overnight?
That's the puzzle. And it's one that requires intentional engineering. It doesn't just happen by itself.
Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're moving far beyond the spreadsheet and really into the self. We're diving into the behavioral blueprints you need to thrive with time freedom instead of just floundering. Okay, let's unpack this psychological hurdle. Section I. Our core idea here is that time affluence without a predefined structure is a really high-risk state. It requires replacing those external mandates with robust, self-imposed constraints.
This sounds serious.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not just talking about being a little bored, are we?
No, it's deeply serious, especially because the kind of high achievers who reach FI are usually people whose brains, they crave structure and challenge.
Right.
So the problem of limitless freedom shows up immediately. The alarms, the deadlines, the daily mandate to show up at an office, it's all gone. And that structure didn't just organize their calendar, it organized their mind.
And we know that initial euphoria, that honeymoon phase,
Yeah.
it fades pretty quickly. It's the law of marginal utility, but applied to leisure. The first few hours of unstructured time are pure bliss. You might love the first 5 hours of video games or, the first week of sleeping in.
But the 50th hour.
Exactly. The utility of that unstructured leisure just drops off a cliff. By week 5, you might find yourself waking up anxious, feeling this compulsion to do something, but you have no direction. And that decline leads directly to restlessness and, frankly, disillusionment.
Which dovetails right into this idea of an identity loss crisis. For so many people who crushed it financially, their self-worth was, it was intricately linked to their title, right? VP, director, founder.
Their output, their importance in an organization. The abrupt total loss of that status and that role, it actually triggers a psychological grieving process, the genuine grief, because a core part of their self-concept is just gone.
And this disorientation fuels what you call the uselessness effect.
Yes. The uselessness effect. It's that feeling where your primary mechanism for contributing to society, which for most of us is our job, is suddenly dissolved, and you feel useless.
It's not just about money, it's about relevance.
Precisely. Think of a former CTO who solved multi-million-dollar problems every single day. Now they're struggling to use new labels like gardener or investor or full-time parent because those labels just don't carry the same social or personal weight for them.
It feels like low-stakes play compared to what they were doing before.
Right. Their identity is suddenly obsolete, and that blank space causes real anxiety. Plus, all their friends, their entire social network, are all still working 60 hours a week. They can't relate.
They're wrestling with that question, who am I without my job?
And if they reached FI really quickly, they might not have ever diversified their identity outside of work. Their whole sense of self was tied up in that one thing.
Which is complicated by what you call the anxiety of limitless possibility. It just sounds so counterintuitive that having infinite choices could lead to paralysis.
But it's a well-documented psychological phenomenon. The successful, productive mind is constantly being challenged by complex, high-stakes problems at work. When those problems disappear, the brain doesn't just switch off. That cognitive engine starts to idle, and it gets restless.
So if you can do anything, learn Russian, hike the Appalachian Trail, start a nonprofit, the sheer cognitive burden of choosing the right thing from all those options is overwhelming.
It creates profound decision paralysis. It's the fear of wasting this precious time capital, isn't it? They succeeded so dramatically by optimizing every single moment at work, and now they worry that if they choose Project A over Project B, they've made a non-optimal choice with their life.
The stakes feel even higher.
They do. Because the time is finite, even though it feels abundant. And if you fail at this new thing after succeeding so spectacularly in your career, that failure feels exponentially worse.
Yeah.
So what do? They freeze. They drift.
So the path forward isn't maximizing freedom. It's actually kind of the opposite. It's about implementing structure.
Yes. Successful navigation means designing a life based on the intentional engineering of self-imposed, meaningful constraints. You have to transition from a life governed by external mandates, bosses, deadlines, to a life governed by internal discipline, your own routines, your own defined projects. That structure is the key defense against the psychological drift.
Okay, now that we understand the psychological shock, let's get tactical. Let's look at the biggest mistakes people make right after they hit FI. These are the 5 behavioral pitfalls we see all the time. The first one is so fundamental. Mistake number 1, retiring from something, not to something.
This is the classic escape trap. So many people in the fire community are retiring early because they're burnt out, they're sick of the grind. They are, in effect, running away from pain.
And they wrongly assume that just removing the disliked job will magically solve all their problems.
Exactly. And for that first month, the honeymoon phase, it confirms that belief. No alarm, no boss.
Yeah.
It feels better. But that feeling is just relief. It's temporary. It's not purpose.
So if you only have a financial plan that shows you how to start working, but you don't have a life plan that shows you how to start living, your plan is dangerously incomplete.
Terribly incomplete. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're bored and unfulfilled, that money isn't serving any real purpose. It's just inert capital.
Okay, so we don't need some huge, detailed 30-year life plan, but we need direction. What's the solution here?
The solution is anchor points. You have to understand what you are retiring to. Identify your top 3 or 4 core values. Is it health, family, adventure, deep expertise in a field?
And for each of those values?
For each value, commit to one specific thing you will actively do in retirement. And this is the critical part. You must then plan how your financial resources will actively support that activity.
So it's not just I value health, it's I'm budgeting for a trainer and better food.
Exactly. If your value is adventure, budget for the extended travel. Money has to support the meaning, not just enable the lack of work.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to mistake number 2. Failing to practice retirement. I mean, you're going from 100 miles per hour to a complete sudden stop.
It's a shock to the system, physically, mentally, socially. So many high achievers enter retirement totally unprepared because they never actually rehearsed living their new life.
They never tried living on their retirement budget.
That's part of it, but more importantly, they never tested whether they actually enjoy the activities they plan to do. They fantasized about woodworking for years, but they never spent a weekend in a workshop to see if they liked the sawdust.
They treat retirement like a finish line, assuming that the person they are on day 1 will be the same person a year later.
Right. We suggest treating retirement like a big performance that requires rehearsal. Try things out before you leave your job. If you plan to volunteer, start doing it on weekends now. If you want to take lessons, start now.
This helps you figure out what gives us sustained fulfillment versus what's just a novelty.
Yes, exactly. You work out the kinks in your new routines ahead of time. You retire with confidence, knowing you're retiring into something you've already tested and you know you enjoy.
Okay, that testing phase is critical. Now, mistake number 3 is a big one, a real tactical deep dive. Being too conservative with the portfolio, it seems so instinctive to just protect the nest egg at all costs once you quit.
It does, but it's probably the single biggest unforced error we see among early retirees. If you retire at 45 or 50, your money needs to last for potentially 40 or 50 years.
So the traditional advice to get really conservative, move into cash and bonds. That's for someone retiring at 65.
Right, someone with a maybe 30-year horizon.
Yeah.
For an early retiree, that whole risk calculation completely flips.
Why? What's the real enemy here if it's not a temporary market downturn?
The real enemy is the silent killer. The permanent loss of purchasing power due to inflation. Look, market downturns hurt. They're painful. But historically, they are cyclical and temporary. They pass. Inflation, on the other hand, just constantly, relentlessly erodes the value of your capital year after year for decades.
So if your portfolio is too conservative, maybe it's only making 2 or 3%, but inflation is averaging 3.5%. You're losing money every single year.
You are getting poorer every year.
Yeah.
You get a false sense of security today that you are going to pay for dearly down the road when going back to work is no longer a viable option.
So we need to think about something like an equity glide path.
Exactly. Standard planning assumes you de-risk into retirement. Early retirement planning often suggests the opposite. You might start with a high equity exposure, say 75 to 85%, and rely on that growth to fight inflation for decades. Then you gradually glide down to a safer allocation later in your 60s or 70s.
That's a huge mindset shift. It leads us right to mistake number 4, using conventional rules that don't apply. Let's start with the big one, the 4% rule.
The 4% rule is based on William Bengen's research, which was for a 30-year time horizon. If you retire at 52, 30 years means you run out of money at 82. If you live a healthy life into your 90s, that's a potential disaster.
So what's the adjustment? We can't just guess at a lower number, like 3.5%.
A lower number is a better starting point. For very long time horizons, studies suggest a safer initial withdrawal rate is closer to 3.25% to 3.5%. But just lowering the percentage isn't enough. You have to move toward dynamic spending strategies.
Okay, what does that mean? Dynamic spending.
It means your spending isn't fixed. It's tied to your portfolio's performance. Strategies like the variable percentage withdrawal or VPW rule are crucial. When the market is up, you spend a little more. When the market is down, you must have the discipline to voluntarily spend less.
And that prevents sequence of returns risk from killing your portfolio in the first few years.
It's your number one defense against it. It demands behavioral discipline, but it dramatically improves the longevity of your portfolio over 40 or 50 years.
Okay, another conventional blind spot. 401k access. My money's all tied up, but I can't touch it until 59 and a half.
Huge problem. If you retire at 48, you need access to that capital for over a decade. This is why having taxable brokerage accounts and Roth IRAs is so important for those early years.
But what if most of my wealth is in my 401k?
Then you need specific strategies. There are two main legal ways to do this. First, the Roth conversion ladder. You convert portions of your traditional 401k to a Roth IRA. You pay the taxes now, and 5 years after each conversion, that specific chunk of money becomes penalty-free and accessible.
A 5-year waiting period.
Right. The second is Rule 72T, or Substantially Equal Periodic Payments, SEPPs. This lets you set up a fixed annual withdrawal schedule from your retirement accounts based on your life expectancy, and you can access that penalty-free before 59 and a half.
Both sound like they require some serious planning.
They do. They're not simple, but they are essential tools for anyone serious about true early retirement.
And the third major conventional rule that trips people up, the healthcare blind spot.
Yes. Everyone just assumes Medicare will be there at age 65. But if you retire before then, you need a robust plan to bridge that gap. And this is a massive source of fear. People who are financially ready to go will delay for years because they're terrified of navigating COBRA or the marketplace.
They stay in a high-stress job just for the health insurance card.
And that's such a costly psychological trade-off. The key is advanced preparation. You have to plan for it just as rigorously as you planned your investments. Don't let the fear of administrative complexity derail your entire plan.
Okay, finally, mistake number 5, ignoring part-time or phased work. If I just quit a job I hated, the last thing I want to hear is that I should get another job.
I get it. The idea can be unappealing, especially if you're burnt out. But it serves three critical functions. Two are behavioral, one is financial.
Okay, what are the behavioral ones?
First, it's a healthy transition period. It eases that shock from all in to nothing. It avoids the cold turkey problem. Second, it provides an immediate social anchor and a routine, which helps fight off that isolation and aimlessness that hits so many people.
And the financial advantage, is it just the cash flow?
It's more than that. The after-tax benefit is often much higher than people realize because of our progressive tax system.
How so?
Well, if you were earning $200,000 full-time, your last dollars were taxed at a very high marginal rate. If you now transition to part-time earning $60,000, those new dollars are taxed at a much, much lower rate. You're earning your money more efficiently.
I see. So the part-time income replaces what would have been your highest tax dollars.
Exactly. Plus, that income acts as an incredible buffer against market volatility. It reduces the pressure to draw down from your portfolio during market dips. It basically buys you time to figure out what you actually want to do with your life. It's a grace period that a lot of cold turkey retirees wish they had taken.
We've just covered a lot of the common pitfalls and mistakes people make, and that can feel a little heavy, but identifying the problems is just the first step.
Right. So now let's pivot. We've talked about the psychological cliff jump. Now let's get into the solutions. Let's look at the strategic, intentional ways that high achievers successfully navigate this transition.
It's time to build the safety net. And hey, if you're finding this deep dive useful, if these are the kinds of detailed conversations you want to have about the FIRE journey, this is probably a great time to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our future explorations.
Absolutely. Because what we're about to get into are the actual transitional models, the things that act as crucial behavioral shock absorbers, helping your mind and your life adjust to all this freedom.
Okay, let's start with phased retirement. This is where you gradually reduce your work hours or maybe transition to a consulting role within your old company.
The primary psychological benefit of phased retirement is that it directly addresses that identity loss crisis we talked about. You maintain a critical, recognizable link to your familiar work environment and your professional self.
So you can still answer the "what do you do" question with a satisfying professional answer.
Precisely. It's an identity bridge. It gives you validation while you're taking the time to build your new self. And practically, of course, it prolongs your income, and you often keep vital benefits like health insurance, which makes it a powerful de-risking strategy.
Okay, next up is Coast FIRE, the optionality accelerator. For the listener who might have hit this number but is still working, what's the core behavioral shift this milestone enables?
Coast FIRE means your investment portfolio is already big enough that with no more contributions from you, it will grow through compounding to reach your final FI number by your target age. You are essentially done saving, even if you aren't done earning.
And the behavioral benefit of that is huge, I imagine.
It's massive. It provides immediate peace of mind. It completely eliminates that chronic midlife savings pressure.
So if I hit my Coast FIRE number at 40, I never have to worry about saving another dime for my retirement at 65. I can just let compounding do its thing.
Yes. And because that savings pressure gone, it immediately accelerates your career optionality. You are now free to prioritize fulfilling lower-paying work over those high-stress, high-income roles. You can flip the script from full-time work and part-time life to full-time life and part-time work.
It frees you up for non-monetary goals, like taking a year off to be with aging parents or pursuing a passion project that just doesn't pay well.
It's the ultimate mental freedom. Knowing that foundational safety net is secure lets you take calculated risks, maybe go back to school, or just enjoy a more comfortable lifestyle while you figure out your long-term non-financial goals.
And our third model is Barista FIRE, routine and social anchor. This is where you have enough passive income for your baseline expenses, but you supplement it with low-stress part-time work. This seems like the perfect cure for that uselessness effect.
It is the ultimate psychological stabilizer. That low-stress, part-time job, and it doesn't have to be in a coffee shop, it could be consulting 2 days a week, or working at a library, provides an immediate external routine and, crucially, a social anchor.
It replaces that missing daily interaction with colleagues and customers.
Exactly. It forces you out of the house, you have low-stakes daily deliverables, and you maintain a baseline of human interaction. And financially, That supplementary income is an incredible buffer against market volatility.
Mm.
If the market dips, you're not panicked into drawing down your portfolio too much. It's a very practical bridge.
We've now established the guardrails, the transition
Mm.
models, but the real deep dive begins when you wake up, you look at that wide open calendar,
Mm.
and you have to decide what fills those 40 or 50 hours a week with actual meaning.
Right. And this brings us to section 4, engineering intentionality. We're talking about building your fulfillment portfolio.
I like that framing, a portfolio of fulfillment.
Sustained post-VI well-being is achieved through the intentional, rigorous allocation of your time across 3 critical pillars: passion, learning, and contribution. But it all starts with a fundamental behavioral shift to what we call the creator mindset.
Tell me more about that shift from consumer to creator. Why is passive consumption such a trap?
It's vital because abundant time often creates this gravitational pull toward passive consumption. Binge-watching shows, doom-scrolling, shopping, even aimless travel. Consuming is looking outside yourself to fill an internal void. It's easy, it's low resistance, and it's ultimately unsatisfying.
So watching a documentary about history is consumption, but researching and writing an article about that same history is creation.
That is the perfect distinction. Fulfillment requires moving from being a passive consumer to an active creator. Writing, building, teaching, producing something tangible. This provides the intellectual resistance and cognitive challenge that you need to replace the demands of a high-achieving career.
That intellectual resistance is key for the mind that thrives on complexity.
It's the cognitive demand signal. The productive mind needs a complex problem to solve, and creation serves as vital self-definition. Producing a tangible output, a community garden, a mentorship program, a finished piece of art, it generates a new, self-owned achievement that validates your new identity.
But that sounds like a huge leap, going from zero to creator.
It does, and that's why we need a framework for it. You have to recognize that creation is a journey, not a jump. We see about 7 iterative stages in moving from consuming to creating.
Okay, let's walk through those.
It starts with 1, awareness, just passive exposure to a skill or a concept. Then you move to 2, active consuming, where you deliberately seek out that work. You read every book in a genre.
Then what?
Then 3, critical consuming. You become an expert. You notice the nuances, you understand the craft. That leads to 4, curating, where you collect, organize, and share the best examples with others. You become a trusted source.
And after curating?
That's the pivot point. You get to 5, copying. This is so important. An aspiring writer copies the structure of a favorite novel. A woodworker copies the joints of a master. It's how you build muscle memory.
From there, you go to 6, which is mashups.
Right. You combine elements from different works, making something derivative but new. And finally, you get to 7, creating from scratch. You take the biggest risks, apply your unique perspective, and find your own voice. Using this framework makes the whole process feel manageable.
Okay, so even with a creator mindset, you still need structure. We talked about replacing the external scaffolding with self-imposed structure.
It's non-negotiable. If your commute and your 8 a.m. meeting used to dictate your rhythm, something else has to now.
What's the first step to building that?
Implement a non-negotiable morning anchor, a self-designed routine that replaces the office prep. It has to be specific, but challenging, and you do it daily before anything else. A 90-minute walk, dedicated language study, deep work on a project, rigorous exercise.
Something that forces you out of bed and into a state of intentional productivity.
Exactly, and your goals change too. You move away from those huge long-term goals, the promotion, hitting the FI number, to shorter-term, in-the-moment goals. You're focused on personal growth, health, and pleasure today.
This brings us to the 3 pillars of that fulfillment portfolio. Let's start with pillar 1, passion and mastery. You say we need to distinguish between hobbies and passion projects.
It's a really important distinction. Hobbies are low stakes, pure pleasure. Gaming, knitting without a purpose, they're great for stress relief. Passion projects, though, are driven by deep interest, high intention, and they usually lead to a tangible output. Launching a podcast, becoming a certified wilderness guide, they require sustained commitment.
And they yield greater, more sustained fulfillment.
Far greater. And the key is to apply your old professional skills project management organization to these creative endeavors, but with one critical caveat. Focus on non-monetized mastery.
Meaning, don't try to turn it into a business right away.
Please don't. Pursue it solely for intrinsic enjoyment. Eliminate the performance anxiety that was tied to your career. If you immediately try to monetize your hobby, you risk reintroducing all the pressure that made you want to retire in the first place.
Okay, pillar 2, Continuous intellectual engagement. For the high-achieving mind, casual reading just isn't enough to replace the complexity of their old career.
The learning has to meet a high challenge threshold to combat cognitive stagnation. The mind thrives on rigor, so the learning needs to be formal, like taking an accredited college course in a new field, or formal language study that leads to fluency, or working on highly complex technical passion projects.
Why is that rigor so important?
Because reading widely is passive consumption.
Hmm.
Rigorous study forces you into active learning. It has accountability, it forces structured practice, and it rebuilds those neural pathways that thrived on complexity. That sustained intellectual demand is essential for long-term cognitive health.
And finally, pillar 3, community and contribution. This tackles both isolation and the uselessness effect.
Yes, and this pillar is so crucial because the job was the primary social anchor for so many people. Structured contribution provides tangible health ROI. Volunteering, for instance, is statistically linked to better psychosocial outcomes, a reduced risk of physical limitations, and significantly lower rates of depression and anxiety.
It reinforces that sense of usefulness.
Absolutely. And you should volunteer strategically. Use your professional expertise, mentor younger people, join nonprofit boards where your skills are invaluable, offer pro bono consulting.
And what about just simple social routine?
That works wonders too. Work part-time at a hospital gift shop, deliver for Meals on Wheels, volunteer to help kids read at a school, become a museum docent. The key is external accountability, regular interaction, and a contribution that reinforces your sense of belonging and, well, necessity.
We've covered a huge amount of ground today, moving from the spreadsheet all the way to the soul. I think the time-rich paradox really proves that financial independence is just the foundation. The true mastery of freedom lies in the rigorous, intentional engineering of structure, purpose, and self-imposed constraints.
It really requires being just as proactive about your psychological and behavioral plans as you ever were about your financial goals. That fulfillment portfolio, passion, learning, and contribution, it's your essential defense against the shock of time affluence.
And crucially, the identity you build on day one of retirement. It's not a fixed destination, is it?
No, not at all. The new you isn't found on retirement day. It's an evolving, iterative identity. Fulfillment requires you to continuously test and iterate on that purpose portfolio as your interests and life priorities change over the next 4 decades. Yet stay flexible and curious.
For those of you listening who achieved FI by mastering complexity in your careers, the post-work challenge is really the same. That highly productive mind must be continually challenged with high-resistance work.
The highest utility of your time capital is found when you strategically choose the next mountain to climb, making sure that your boundless freedom remains anchored by a defined, self-set mission. The question is no longer how much money do I need, it's what is the most complex, fulfilling problem you are going to tackle next? Because in that pursuit and that intentional challenge, that's where you'll find sustained satisfaction.